Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are and when you're watching this. Wherever and whenever that is, I hope you and yours are safe and healthy and following all prescribed public health regulations because that's the way we're going to get through this. Right, this is Lesson 27, the European Union Part 2. And wow, it's hard to believe that despite the craziness, the semester is actually coming to an end fairly soon. All right, I will be going through the slides, and if you're following along, I will let you know when to change. Okay, coming up first, we have our course administration. Please be tracking the email digest. It comes to your official CSU Pueblo account, so if you don't monitor that account, you really need to start doing that. But anyway, if you're planning to graduate this summer, information about how summer graduation contracts are to be handled is posted in the email digest, so you need to be reviewing that. I did go ahead and send the invitation for our optional Zoom session next week during our final exam period. You are absolutely welcome to join us, but you don't have to. Not a course requirement, and I'm not taking attendance. I just, might be nice to get together, so to speak, one last time before we go our separate ways for the summer. Just a note on due dates. Be doing your best. If you are catching up on older papers, everything needs to come through Blackboard, and as I said in my email, even if you've emailed it to me, please put it in through Blackboard. I know it's extra work for you, but it's really allowing me to get caught up, and well, I haven't caught up yet, but I'm getting there. I'm really getting there, and it helps a lot. So, oh, if you haven't yet done your instructor conference, that is a course requirement. It is worth points. Just get in touch with me. We can do it via phone, we can do it via Zoom, we can do it via email, but I need to hear from you about that. Advising for fall 2020, same thing. You don't actually need to meet with an advisor at this point to be registered due to the circumstances. You can go ahead and just put your classes in, but I strongly advise you to talk to an advisor from your major or majors and minor or minors, just to make sure you're on track, to make sure you're getting the classes you need to graduate. Let's see, that's about all I have to offer up there on new announcements. Jobs for history graduates. This is an interesting one. And by the way, if you have an interest in art and history, this would be a kind of a neat one, because T.C. Steele was apparently, and I didn't know this, sorry, kind of unidimensional, I guess. Anyway, I didn't know, a very important artist native to Indiana, and so his home where he worked is now a state museum, and they're looking for a site director, and site manager, sorry, is the title. And this is the kind of thing that you're trained for. Sure, you'll have to figure out the details of the individual job when you get there, but rack up an internship or two and your coursework. This is the kind of job you can have. So, exciting. At least I think so. All right, writing tip for the day. Just some thoughts on the whole poster concept. Some of you are further along than others, and don't panic if you're in one of those others categories. There are just thousands upon thousands of great examples. I said hundreds, but I'm really cutting you short. Lots of guides to how to do academic posters online. I've given you a link to one possibility. The main thing about all this is if you look at guides and you look at suggestions, they're guides and suggestions, not dictates. So if the paper says, but you find a guide that says, maybe 40% of your poster should be white space for visual clarity, and you don't think you're at 40%, don't panic. Take that as advice and look at it and say, okay, is this clear or is this really muddled? Have I tried to cram too much text in there? Do I need to even it out? I will tell you this, that most of the guides out there will probably suggest a lower word count than you're going to end up with. Just to specify, there is no required word count for this project. I'm not going to be counting words. But, it's what you can fit on the poster without making it insanely compressed and nothing but just a giant PowerPoint slide of words. Don't do that. The idea is to find a way to creatively and cleverly blend visuals and text and graphs and that sort of thing. but don't panic over this. Was actually meant to be kind of a fun project, and you have a chance to present your work, and you will in the fall. But at the same time, I also understand that you are undergraduates. I used to be one longer ago than I probably should admit, but I remember it. And the pressure to get a project right is real, and I understand that. I guess I'm trying to tell you is there's lots of rights for this project, not just one. So if you don't conform to any particular guide or style suggestion that you find on the net, don't worry about that. Just look at your poster kind of objectively and say, okay, am I accomplishing what I set out to do? The main thing to remember about it is a single page of text and illustrations. Everything goes on this one page, which we would be printing out on a giant piece of paper and tacking up to a board if we were doing that, but we're just doing it electronically. So everything goes on one sheet, one slide. 48 by 56 is the usual print size, but there are variations on that too. Less important to you since we won't be printing them, but a guideline. We will be printing them in the fall, so maybe you take that into account. Also note that there are a lot of similarities to the research papers you've done in the past. This is not completely alien territory. A research paper starts with a question. That's what your poster started with. The basic one-sentence answer to your question is your thesis. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's not that different from what you did with a paper. You're going to have text on here. You're going to have illustrations. Many of you have used illustrations in your papers before, so no problem there. And somewhere along the way, you need to put in some form of citation or sourcing. For posters, footnotes are generally not required. You are welcome to use them if you so desire, but you are going to want to include a bibliography, and this should not be a super bibliography of every source that you ever thought about consulting, but it should be a guide to the main sources that from which you drew your information, and absolutely any source from which you quoted must be in that bibliography, which can go wherever you think it goes best. That's really all the advice I have on posters. I'll reiterate a few things on Thursday just for the heck of it. The main advice is the same advice I've been giving you all along, is don't panic. You can do this, and you can actually do a really good job of it, even if you've never done a poster before. Just be yourself and do the work you want to do and answer the question you want to answer. That's what I can offer you. Well, that waxed a little philosophic, but okay. Moving on to questions, I'll be looking forward to them in the discussion boards. I know I'm a little behind on those, but I will be catching up today and tomorrow, and I should be by Thursday's class completely caught up on all grading and all discussion boards, just in time to wrap up the semester. Kind of like closing the barn door after the horses escaped, but what the heck. Right. And for some reason, my slide didn't save, so I will be fixing this slide, hopefully before you see it, but I'll be doing a fix on that. Anyway, computers. What you'll see next will be 3 groups, and they say the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and I think I've reached the point of insanity. Despite the best of intentions, the idea of having you put together a PowerPoint slide seems to have crashed and burned utterly. Just not working. I know some of you have been trying really hard, but because some people are having connection difficulties, getting that kind of organization together without a single voice saying, you do this, it was probably too much. In retrospect, it was definitely too much. So rather than have you try to do posters, and yes, holy mackerel, that dog is ridiculous. All right. Rather than having you try to do a slide based on this, I'd simply like you to read 4 or 5 of the primary sources and put some comments in the discussion board. Now, on the discussion board, I've still given you a list of 3, so Cold War Europe with the list of names, Unifying Europe with the list of names, and Transformation of Politics and Society with a list of names. So please post in your correct board and read 4 or 5 of the sources and see what you come up with. Some ideas, some thoughts, maybe even discuss, who knows. And I would like to say, I'm going to just make this retroactive. I'm not going to try to track down those slides. I'd only received one for the last month. And for those of you who contributed to the board already, tried to get a slide going but didn't quite succeed, we're going to call that good enough. And I think that demonstrates your effort. If you haven't had a chance, if you're just catching up, if you've been behind, that's okay. Just go back to the boards for the previous weeks, for lesson 2, for whatever topic we're on. Find your assignment through the slides and the discussion boards and just do what we're doing today. Read 4 or 5 of the documents, come up with some comments and some thoughts and share them. And now for everybody else, what you need to be doing is keeping an eye on the discussion board, and when it's popping up with new comments that you haven't read yet, go back and look at them, even if it may be a week or so behind or a couple weeks behind, whatever. The whole point of this exercise, this whole semester, this whole class, is to give you a solid educational experience. And I remain committed to that despite the fun and games that COVID has inspired. And just because things haven't worked out quite as planned doesn't mean you can't learn something. Learn quite a lot, hopefully. So what I need you to do is to take that little notch more of initiative, be on those discussion boards, and when you see a question or answer has popped up that you haven't looked at yet, go ahead and look at it, even if it's from weeks past. All right? Okay, so if you have any questions on that, feel free to go ahead and email me or post it to the general discussion board. But again, in summary, find your name on the slide, read 4 or 5 of those documents, and go to the related discussion forum on Blackboard and post your thoughts. There we go. All right. And so in conclusion, we looked over Cold War Europe, unifying Europe, ? And the transformation of politics and society. And hopefully you gained something from that, certainly more perhaps than you gained from the collective slide exercise, which was worth a try, right? First time I ever taught an online class. Feel free to put in the course feedback that was a really bad idea. It won't tell me anything new, but it'll kind of reinforce what I've learned. That takes us to our final slide about learning more. The Alistair Blair book. You may recognize that name from the European Union video that we watched on Thursday, lesson 26. So worth a look, clearly an expert. Tony Jute's Post-War, A History of Europe Since 1945. The best laid plans of mice and men aft gang a lie, as Robert Burns would tell us. In this case, I can tell you the first 2/3 of the book are fantastic, and I strongly recommend them, and I have every reason to expect that the final third of the book is also going to be excellent. I would especially recommend books, this book in particular, but books like this, these sort of general overview kinds of histories, for those of you who are going into teaching at any level. Perhaps more than some of the more narrowly defined monographs, these will be valuable to you in terms of conveying a broad understanding that you can then share with your students and providing useful anecdotes that'll make you a more effective teacher. Same thing applies with Savage Continent Europe in the aftermath of World War II. It's not nearly as expansive as Jute's Post-War, but still a good overview of this tumultuous time. All right. I think we've got everything back on track and nailed down and all that good stuff. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And my final thought is, as always, don't panic. If you're behind, if you lost track, if you got cut off, that's okay. If you're watching this, you're back on, we can get you caught up. Right. Take care of yourself, take care of yours, family, friends, those around you, and be a responsible citizen. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.